Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. The year is 1942 now. This is a game that's been going on. If you haven't seen 41 and 40 and 39, then I encourage you to go backwards and see those other videos first to see how we got to this point. The purpose of this game is for me to try out some new rules, rules of mine and some proposed rules from historical board gaming for the next iteration of this game, which is Global War 1936 to 1945. So anyway, I'm just going to carry on like most of you know what I'm talking about already. I'm going to make 2 videos a year. Like I originally said I was going to make 1, but it's taken me a long time to make these videos because I'm busy with other things too, right? Like, for instance, I made another video earlier today, and I've got other things going on. But, it takes a long time when you're by yourself to play a turn of this because, you got to sit down and you go, okay, Germany, how much money does Germany got? And then you've got to formulate a strategy for Germany when you haven't played Germany for like 24 hours or longer, right? So anyway, it takes a long time to play, and because of that, it could be 2 days before I get to another video, and so when I go to make the video, then it's hard to remember what happened 2 days ago, right? So I think I'll just do it every 6 months instead of every year. So we're done the first 6 months of 1942, and America's at war. You can see over here they've moved across, and you see this token here. This token means that something is under construction. I should have put something on there, but I didn't. I just put this thing over here. So it's this naval base that's under construction. That's going to allow them to go an extra space, right? But we'll get to that in a bit. Let's just see just how badly Germany is kicking Russia's ass here. So yeah, it's not looking good for the Russians at all. But I've seen this before. I've seen how it doesn't look good at all, and then all of a sudden it turns around. But man, the Germans are just overwhelming them. The Germans built well, you know what I mean? They built their army very well, and the Russians, they kind of got sidetracked, like I think maybe they put a little bit too much effort into this up here in hindsight, because that was a lot of units that they used up here, units that would make this fight a lot closer being even down here, right? Like there's a few dollars difference in everything, but that wasn't money off of the Germans though, like it would be in Global 40. That was extra money that they went and took. So it's looks pretty tough for them right now. It's a good thing that they've got Tankograd down here because they need every little bit of help they can get. But yeah, like the Germans, you look over here, like the Russians only had 1 attack because they didn't have enough units. They've got more now, but at the start of their turn in 1942 here, they only had enough units to attack 1 place. And of course, like I talked to you about this spot over here, about keeping them from getting down into the Middle East down there, because if they manage to take this space right here, Transcaucasia, then they get all of Turkey down here. So I got to stop them at all costs. So this is the only place I was able to attack with the Russians, they did manage to take all the Germans off, but they lost all their ground units too, and they lost a fighter. Like there was another fighter in here. They've got a jet fighter now. That was the weapon that they rolled at the start of the game, but they seriously don't like losing a fighter like that, but they had to, right? Because I mean, the units that were on the board for these guys here were fast movers as well, and there's fast movers in behind them here too. Like you look at this spot right here with the black flag, and that would be these guys over here. So we've got a tank there. Yeah, I guess these guys aren't fast movers, but the ones beside them are. Like this is self-propelled artillery. We've got another tank here. This is a Panzer Grenadier, very, very powerful. They go 2 spaces. This tank here goes 2 spaces. They've got another SS tank here. So, I mean, and plus they've got their Global War heroes. They've got a couple of them over there. They can really put some pressure on these guys down here, so they had to take this out. If they didn't take it out, that would have been a disaster. Germany probably would have had Turkey in the game by the end of this year. You know what I mean? But so we'll see. We'll see if the Russians can hold them off there. Maybe what's necessary here, or what would help out the Germans right now, would be for the Japanese to get into it over here. Japan's kind of busy doing their own thing though, but they've kind of accomplished what they can accomplish now. So maybe they can start moving this way. And in fact, I did start building some units up here. But one of the things that I'm finding right now, I mentioned to you last year about all the partisans that were rolled. Well, they just rolled 4 more partisans this term, 4 more communist partisans. So there's partisans all over China now. And so what's going to happen now is the Japanese are going to have to build infantry class units and strictly infantry class units, because you can't fight partisans with anything but infantry. I mean, you think about what a partisan is. It's just, like it's the lady walking down the street with a loaf of bread. It's the little kid riding his bike, right? You don't know who a partisan is. They're not wearing uniforms, right? And so you don't fight these people with tanks, right? Like you fight them with soldiers, and so in this game it mirrors that. So with the partisans, you can only kill a partisan with an infantry class unit. And so Japan is going to have to build up their infantry class units. And they didn't have many. Like I just bought a bunch of them. I put an infantry here, and then I upgraded this factory here. So this will be able to build 3 units. That's my own house rule. That's not a historical board gaming rule. I'd like to see them put that one in though, because on this side of the board, you don't get many chances to put factories on. If you're just putting single factories everywhere, then it's pretty expensive, right? Anyway, and also they also put three dudes up top here. I was going to put more of those mechanized infantry, the advanced mechs, but I thought, geez, I'm really going to need infantry to take out these partisans, right? So they did manage to get the rest of the island, well, not the rest of them, like they got about as much as they want to, because they could take this island, but then these guys are going to smack them, right? And then they could hit them back, but the Japanese don't want to get bogged down here for $1, right? Like if these guys want to hold on to their $1, then that's nice. You guys just have yourself a party over there, right? But like they put up these blockers here so that all these boats here couldn't reach any of their larger groups of fleet, because the Anzac, like they don't mind losing all their stuff here, as long as they, like if they could take out this group of ships here and lose all their boats, they'd be happy with that, right? Because you've got your American fleet who have started across the water. So all of those boats right there, I'll hold this for a second. You see how much nicer it is with the color coding that I did, right? Before, when it was like this, the green on green here, I could hardly tell what was on there, right? I'd have to get right up close. But now you can see, like there's the Iowa class, there's the battleships, there's the destroyers and the cruisers and the transports, and so it's a lot easier to see. Anyway, those guys now are right here in the Marshall Islands. And they got to be careful moving up though, because I've done that before, where when I was playing the Americans, move them up to Caroline, and then Japan hits them with all they got and lose the American Navy just all completely, right? So I got to be careful. Like I got to make sure as I'm moving across the water that I've got enough stuff with me, because the Americans have a lot more money than the Japanese. They just got to be patient. I'm not used to the Americans getting into the war this soon, so I'm having to hold myself back as the American player, trying not to race across the board as quickly as possible. So like they've got another Iowa class. They threw down a cruiser and a light cruiser here. The light cruisers, you won't find them in the rules. What they are, I'm using, it takes 2 turns to build them, 5 plus 5. And then like a regular cruiser would attack and defend at 6, the light cruiser is going to attack and defend at 5. So anyway, that's light cruisers. And as you can see, this one here, this is a light aircraft carrier for the Germans. I don't know if they built a German aircraft carrier before. Anyway, that's going down, not in this game anyway, that's going down over there because you need carrier-based aircraft to take care of submarines. And you see like that Russian submarine up there, there's nothing I can do about that guy. He's just going to sit there, right, until I take him out. I forgot about that. That was another thing the Germans did. You can see the German Navy, I split it in half because there wasn't enough Russians to worry about them counterattacking. So I took out the Russian boats that were in there with half the German Navy. But anyway, I needed that aircraft carrier in order to take out any Russian subs. So over here, the FEC, like if you look really close, I mean, there's lots of orange here, but if you look really close, there's only one dude, two dudes, and he's not even on the mainland, and a militia. That's it, right? Whereas these guys, there's a fiver underneath this stack here. So there's about 10 dudes here. There's 3 dudes here. There's 4 dudes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tanks. They've got a strategic bomber that they actually did try carpet bombing this guy over here. They missed him. They've got a fighter over here now. There's a self-propelled artillery over here. So I don't think that the Indians are going to be content just to sit back much longer, right? Like they'll build up a little bit more, but what they're doing is they're moving out slowly. Like every turn, they're moving guys to the front here, right? Because they don't want to just go out and then have the boats come around and take them. Like they want to make sure they maintain at least this amount of guys on here, right? And just buy a few guys and move that many off and replace them, right? So that's what I've been doing. But it's just about time to take on the Japanese over there. And what else? Okay, so, if I was to, one of the things you can do, and I haven't done, you could build a rail link between these two territories. You could build a rail link between these two territories. Then they would have a rail line from Egypt over here all the way over to India. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I'm asking myself if that's a good idea or not. I know for one thing, you can't lend lease, right? The British can't lend lease to the FEC because they're already on the same side. They can't lend lease to the Anzac because they're on the same side. So I don't even know if it's even worth it, right? It's not like it's a rail line down here in this area here only has a capacity of 1. So it would cost me quite a bit to build 2 links of rail. 1 link of rail would be one thing, but building 2 links of rail just to get myself 1 unit, from one end to the other of that rail, I'm not sure that it's worth it. But I'll look at that though. I'll sit down and read the rules. And that's what I have been doing, right? That's one of the reasons it's taken me so long to play this game, is that I am sitting down once in a while saying, okay, so now what about this? Before I was just playing the game, right? And you're trying to keep up, But I'm not holding anybody back here. I'm just playing at my own speed. So these guys down here, now the British do have the improved factories. So the little factories are producing 2 things instead of 1. So they threw a couple of dudes down. I gotta put a pie down there. They took this space off of the Germans. The Germans had Portugal there because kind of like they have Angola over here, because those are Portuguese colonies. So I kind of realized all of a sudden, holy shit, that's where the dollar went. Why am I not taking it, right? There's nobody on it. So I finally went over and got it with the mechanized infantry here. But they're just trying to get enough guys down here that these guys aren't going to be a threat to their complex down here. And I think they've done that. Like they've really done that everywhere. The Italians, no question in my mind now, the Italians should have attacked like 3-4 turns ago, definitely while they had the advantage there. If you remember early in the game, they had lots of guys down here to begin with, and they hadn't lost anybody down here in the battle over Abyssinia. Like they should have just went on a tear at that point in time, but they didn't. And I'll file that for future knowledge, right? That I need to take advantage of those kind of opportunities, even as the Italian player. Like the Italian, if they're going to be any sort of help in this game, then they've got to do something, right? It's not like Lobo 40 where they're kind of like an extension of Germany, you know what I mean? Where you're doing can openers and stuff like that. It's not like that at all in this game, because it's quite a ways from Italy to get up to Russia for one thing. And then Italy doesn't make much money, and there's a ton of British boats down here. So you can't really leave the Mediterranean. Italy has got to stay in the Mediterranean and in Africa. they can't be sidetracked by going to Russia in this game. Not unless Britain, for some reason, was decided that they didn't like the Mediterranean, and decided to leave, right? Like, there's just no way you can leave the Mediterranean as the Italian player. So it's a completely different mindset, and I'm trying to learn that, right? I'm trying to learn how to do that, and we'll see. One of the things that Italy could have done a while ago was they could have taken out the French guy. Like, they could still do that, but it's kind of late now, right? Once they leave with their navy, then they leave their home world open. But I am building it up as much as possible. Like, I put a couple more dudes down this turn and a fighter, and so they're starting to build. Actually, no, I didn't put a couple dudes. I put a fighter and a black shirt down. So eventually they'll have quite a bit more, but they got to be careful though, because it doesn't take many. Like, you take in, say, 2 transports. Like with that's with 4 units plus. You got Air Force, and you've got leaders, and you've got the global war heroes that can ride on any type of ship, and next thing you know, your capital's gone, right? Like, here's a global war hero down here. So you gotta watch out for all these kinds of things. And then there's airborne as well, right? Somebody can throw in some airborne. So you really have to watch your capital in this game. I show you down here, like, it looks pretty sparse over there. That's because I usually play the allies from this side of the table. And rather than walking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, so this spot here, this is the Azores, and this is New York. So there's not much in New York right now, just because most of the stuff has moved up to the Azores. So that'll make it easier for me. Like I said, I built this naval base here, and I put this down over here this turn. When they've got this sub to worry about. Apparently, in the rules there, it says that you can't take out one of those subs with a carrier-based aircraft. You can only do it with a plane that's on combat air patrol. But for the life of me, I can't figure those rules out. Like, why would that be? If you have a plane, like, let's say you had a plane here and you went on combat air patrol here, well, the sub just doesn't go there. Like, why would it even think about going there? There's a million spaces on this board. Why go to the one place where that guy tied his plane up? Because if you tie your plane up like that, you can't use it for something else, right? So you've got a plane on combat air patrol, good for you. Unless you have 50 of them on combat air patrol, these subs are just going to get right by them. So I don't know. To me, that's kind of a little bit of a quirk, and maybe I just don't understand the rules properly. So I'll have to figure that out more in the future. Anyway, this is one of the things that the Russians have going for them now is that the Americans are about to get into it, and it's not just them; it's the British as well, right? Like the British, the only thing they did this turn was buy dudes. They put, I think, 4 dudes down in Africa, and then they put the rest of the dudes up there. It's just about time for them to start coming across the water, so the Americans and the British can start hitting Normandy or wherever, right? And that's going to help the Russians out, because that's going to draw the Germans away from the Eastern Front, and they're going to need to do that. Otherwise, the Russians are sunk. I don't see them catching up without any help. So, it could be like in this game. It could be you get so good at this game that you calculate that and you think, well, yeah, let's take the Russians out of this game by doing nothing, right? And then the Germans are way over there in Moscow. Then you hit Berlin, right? I don't know. I could see that being plausible, because if the Russians win, then the Allies don't win, right? It's a 3-sided game, so. Who knows? That might be a good idea. Anyway, I'll be back in 6 months for the rest of 1942. Okay, major implications in the last 6 months here, the last half of 1942. First of all, I remember to put my wide-angle lens on. Do you notice the difference from 10 seconds ago? Anyway, getting back to the game. What the hell happened to the German fleet there? Where did they go? So what happened was, so I'm taking a look at this out here, And the British had a bunch of boats in here, right? There's a bunch more in there now, but they had a bunch of boats in there. And the Germans thought, well, you know, like there was a couple more British boats coming and everything. They thought, you know, like this big navy that we bought, they got a couple of battleships, a couple of destroyers, a couple of cruisers, you know, they were doing pretty good, right? That navy is going to do them no good whatsoever, kind of like the Italians there that waited too long, if they don't do something. So what they thought they'd do is they'd hit this navy here, the British Navy, before the Americans came across and the British built any more, right? I mean, for one thing, the Italians aren't going to do, one of the reasons they can't do anything, like even if they saw off navies, you know what I mean, they kill each other, well then the British have got an extra navy and the Italians don't, right? So for the Germans it was now or never, because when the American Navy finishes coming across the water here, they could have come across, but the German Navy was dead, so they didn't bother. But once they finish coming across, then there's nothing the Germans are going to be able to do about it, right? They couldn't do anything. So the German Navy actually did pretty good in that first battle there. They killed them pretty good, and they had 2 battleships undamaged left and 2 cruisers undamaged. And then I forgot about these Russian boats over here. Remember I stored 3 Russian boats over here? So they came down on their turn, and they actually, like, it was a suicide run and they knew it, but they were hoping to get 1 hit or something, 1 or 2 hits, right? And they did. They managed to knock off the 2 British cruisers that were in here. So then you can see what's here now. This German fleet here, British fleet came in and took out the last 2 British battleships. And they had the support here and everything. But the Germans, they don't feel too bad about it or anything, because they managed to take 6, 9, 10 ships off, and then have a damaged British battleship. Like that'll get repaired. But they managed to take 10 ships off with their navy, right? And what else were they going to do with it, right? It was sitting in here, and they had nothing else to do with it. So they've got this coming along here, a carrier, a light carrier, because they need to, like this guy here, he just took out a transport, so he wasn't convoying. But there's a convoy line here. This guy can convoy all day, unless I've got, like these guys could go on combat air patrol, or I could have carrier-based aircraft, right? And so they hadn't thought about taking their Navy out, but that carrier there isn't going to be such a bad idea anyway, I think, because I mean the Russians aren't over here anymore. Like they're hurting bad. So after the German turn, I mean, it looked unbelievable for the Germans. You know, first of all, they were sitting in the English Channel, and they had 4 big boats left. You know, and plus they had come down here. They took this out, and they had lots of units in here. And plus, you know, like they hadn't lost anything along here, right? So, so they took this out, and they had lots of units in there. And then the Russians took it back. They've got these, where are they here? These PO-2 bombers now. These are the Night Witches, right? So those came on automatically as guard units at a certain point in time. I actually forgot. I was 6 months late putting them on the board. But anyway, I put them on. And anyway, the Russians never lost a unit going in there and taking out the Germans. And there was lots of big units in there, like tanks, and there was a Global War hero. Hang on a second, let me just grab this guy over here. So I got to make sure, because you only get 5 heroes per game, right? So I want to make sure not to put 6 down for somebody. So I have to put them somewhere else, right? So I thought, why not just put them up here? So there's a German, Japanese, and Russian hero that have been lost. The German was in this territory in the last turn there. They're not very good at defense, right? They're only good for offense. And so they're vulnerable to counterattacks, and that's what happened there. But anyway, it's looking a lot better for the Russians here, but still not that great, because you look here, there's just a ton of German dudes here, right? And here, there's lots of stuff over there, lots of stuff, right? It does look better for the Russians right now, but man, before that it wasn't. They did scorched earth here, so like they torched their factory and their air base there, so that's why this marker's on top of here, because the Germans don't get to collect that until the next turn. But lots of stuff coming up now, you can see in behind, lots of big units coming up for the Germans, and back here as well. I'm really liking the self-propelled artillery. I'm starting to buy those for everybody now. Like I keep forgetting because I've never played with them before, right? Then, oh yeah, self-propelled artillery, it's only $5, right? So I keep throwing those down. So there's the first one for the Japanese, and the Germans been using them for a few turns now. The British are starting to use them as well. A couple more partisans cropped up over there, but you can see there's some Japanese dudes in there now. They're just going to start piling dudes in there for a while, because every turn you're going to be rolling for partisans, and so you need infantry to take out those partisans all the time, right? I should start taking some partisan actions. That's one thing I've been kind of lazy at. I haven't taken any partisan actions, which is there's 6 different ones. But anyway, maybe I'll go through them in a turn later. These guys, they had 2 subs moved up. I wanted to move up and take Caroline here, but then I was looking around. Every Japanese boat can hit Caroline. Every single one of them. So I thought maybe that's not such a good idea. Maybe I should wait until I build up that American fleet more. And you can see there is more going down. Like there's oh, this one should actually go on right now. A light carrier should be going down right now, because it look, it was on the payment plans. So there's a couple there now. And then there's another Iowa class and a cruiser that are up there that are going to will be able to join this fleet up here. And then, 2 Iowa class battleships, 3 battleships. There's subs and destroyers and everything. Then they can probably move across. Maybe I'll wait for one more turn to get some more transports and units to bring across with them. These guys over here, here was another big deal. Here was when the Japanese took out Malaya. They were lucky enough to be able to bring some guys down here, so they weren't just amphibiously assaulting, because that's really tough to amphibiously assault not only a place that has a fortification like it did, but also a coastal gun, because the coastal guns, what they do is you get up to 3 shots, kind of like an anti-aircraft gun, but up to 3 shots at amphibious boats, right? So it's not just like if there was a battle for boats out there, between boats out there, and transports and bombardment shots coming in, then you would only get the shots at the transports and the guys with the bombardment shots. But anyway, they managed to hit 1 out of 3 with that coastal gun. So they took out a transport with 2 elite Marines on it. And on the transports coming over, they only had the hero here and this guy. So I mean, they would have been screwed if they didn't have more coming down here, right? But yeah, they did lose a hero in here as well, because 1 came down and 1 came over on a boat. They had to take him as a casualty in that first round, because you have to take the guys off the boats in the first round rather than the guys from the land. Then I had 2 destroyers over here, which was a good idea. I had 2 blockers over here, right? And they're kind of protecting these guys. I could have moved these guys further up to Japan, but I know how much stuff is back here, right? And so I don't want to just run away from these islands and just give them up, right? So I'm going to leave some people down here, or some boats down here for the Japanese. But these subs came up. They didn't bring their whole navy. They just brought the subs up here. And the subs managed to take out the destroyers without losing any. So the Anzacs doing pretty good there. Japanese should get busy and kick them in the nuts. The British did move up. They took Siam, so they've decided to go on the offensive here. They got to keep an eye back here though, because of the make sure that that the boats can't come around and get them, right? This guy hasn't hit anything yet. He's been doing carpet bombing. He tried to carpet bomb Malaya there, but missed everything. It's 3 shots at 2, right? So it's pretty tough to hit at 2. But it's nice when you do though, because nobody gets to shoot back at you. You're way up there, right? But apparently my British bomber isn't that good at dropping bombs. So anyway, moving along here. Not much happened over here at all. Put down a couple of those self-propelled artilleries here and another tank. The Italians thought long and hard about going this turn, but they just don't have enough back on their capital. And they've got more now, but they just can't do it. Maybe if the Russians would leave or something, you know. But it's tough because they've got 3 factions in there: the British, the French, and the Russians in there. And it's tough for the Italians. Before they go to war, they don't have much money, and for them to build up a defense, it takes forever for them, because you're only looking at buying 1 or 2 units per turn, right? And so it kind of takes a long time, especially when you want to also, like, I was busy finishing off a battleship and a cruiser and putting a couple more boats down, right? So I mean that takes your money too. It's not just a matter of piling dudes on, right? The Russians haven't done anything with Spain yet. I keep kind of forgetting about it, but that's not such a bad thing anyway, because the Germans forget about it too, right? But the Germans, they can't really spread themselves too thin. I mean, I showed you what they look like up there, but they've got a pretty good wall going there, right? Their Atlantic wall. It is vulnerable in any one spot. I mean, you can assault any one of those beaches and take it out. But the good thing for them is that they've got units all around, right? So they will be able to counterattack and take it back. The French, they're actually building up quite a bit because of every turn, or about 2 every 3 turns, I think, they're able to put one of these guys down. They don't have a factory, so they can't put anything down except for colonial infantry. But as you can see, they've got 2 up here now and 2 down here now. So that's just what they've managed to gather since they went down. And then over here, they did roll a partisan this turn. I put him underneath a chip because otherwise he'd get lost in here. This is a Vichy territory, right? So I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I'm not sure what's gonna happen. Like, if you have 2 Vichy there, or 2 partisans, then you can make them into 1 militia, right? So, but would that be, if I put a militia in there, would that be declaring war on the Vichy? I don't know. I know that they're kind of like a strict neutral. If you attack one of them, then all of them go to the other side, right? So, and that includes everybody. Like, if you were the Axis and you were to attack one Vichy, then they would all go back to being Free French, right? So I'm going to have to read up again on that to see what kind of implications there are using these partisans, if that's going to make any difference. I have killed a few partisans over this past round. It's sometimes that you forget about them because they're crouching down and you don't necessarily see them. There's so many units on the board. But I have managed to kill a few of them. You can only use your infantry. The heroes are good for that because they're an infantry class unit that can actually shoot somebody, right? Whereas the other guys, like if you're in a mountain territory, then they only roll at 1, So they're rolling just as good as the partisan is. But the Global War hero, though, they don't have any. They're not affected by terrain effects, and they roll at a 4 on offense. So they're really handy at taking out the partisans, that's for sure. What else is happening here? I think that's just about it. I'll just move around a bit here, let you take another look. The Americans over here. So they bought their first. Heavy bomber. So that's going to be heading up to Great Britain there. That's they've got long range aircraft and they've got heavy bombers. Lots of weapons, lots of weaponry developed. The one thing though is nobody can seem to advance on improved shipyards. Like everybody tries it and they just like to keep rolling 1s. and you need to roll what? You need a 7 on that one, and everybody keeps rolling ones. The Americans actually moved along there this round, but that's the first time in a long time anybody's moved on there. The British, the Japanese, and the Americans are all trying to go for improved shipyards, but it's just not happening for anybody at this point. So, but you can see what's coming across. Like the Americans do have the heavy artillery. I'll let you see what that looks like there. This is the I'm using for the heavy artillery or the advanced artillery, and that attacks at 4 instead of 3. The advanced artillery, but it costs the same though. So once you get advanced artillery, there's no point in buying regular artillery anymore, right? Anyway, that's the end of 1942, and we're well into the war now. So we're 1943. So take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.